tried to wake my husband. Eyes still closed, and there was no response from my husband. And that's when I did open my eyes, and I looked straight ahead. And there was this thing, this creature, standing at the foot of my bed. And it was the first time I had ever seen that consciously. I was awake. I hadn't gone to sleep yet. I was saying my prayers. So by this time, my legs were numb. And I sat up in bed, dragging my heavy legs with me, and turned up behind me and threw a pillow, big pillow, that I made. You would think that I stuffed them with rocks because it was heavy. And I hit him too, that creature. And my next conscious memory, fragmented memory, was seeing white fabric flow up and over my eyes and then down again. And then I felt something, perhaps little fists or maybe an instrument, pounding on my back. And that was all I remembered. And then my next conscious memory was that of falling into my bed. I could have fallen anywhere from 2 inches up or 2 feet up or whatever, but I was conscious and I felt myself fall into bed.
Well, I was contacted by 2 of the witnesses by letter, and they found out about the 3rd witness a little later on, and then ultimately the 4th witness. I received a letter from her and have dealt with her on a personal basis. There's a 5th witness who I dealt with earlier who had seen the UFO from another point of view. She had not seen the figures floating in the air, but she had seen the UFO at exactly that hour on that night. So there are obviously many other witnesses. And essentially from some distance, it's about a quarter of a mile, she saw this very large ship above the building. And this occurred after the motor died in her car, and the car stopped, and the lights went out in the car and on the bridge, and on the bridge roadway. And several other cars also stopped with their lights out. No one knew what was happening to the cars, why everybody's automobiles were stopping. And she looked to her right and saw this enormous object, very, very brightly lit above a building. And then blue-white light came out from the bottom of it, and she, at that point, saw these figures. She didn't know what they were at that time. They looked like balls. They were people rolled up in a kind of fetal position, came popping out of the window, 12 stories off the ground. And they all unfolded at once. And then were taken up quickly into the craft, this whole thing taking roughly about 12 seconds. And then the craft moved away. And her descriptions exactly corroborate the descriptions of the 2 intelligence security agents in the car down below who were accompanying an important political figure. They all saw the same thing that the women saw, except they were closer.
Let's turn over to Linda and go with the 12th
He's
floor
an
incident.
artist, I think. He studied under Norman Rockwell, I think.
Yes, and he has produced some fantastic images, and some are actually at display. One of them you have, right? Or is it at a museum?
He has one of his paintings on regarding our case, I think is in Roswell. Yeah, it's right over our display.
Well, turning to Linda now, Miss Cortile, let's go to the year and let's talk about the 12th floor incident before we start crossing over to the cases. Take us back to, I think it was in the 80s, of course, right?
Yes. It was November 30th, 1989.
My 10th birthday.
It occurred about 3:15 in the morning. I had just finished doing some backlogged laundry, and, I was working full-time, and, I had 2 boys to raise, and so, I had all that laundry. Well, anyway, I finished the laundry, and I went to bed, and it was about a week after Thanksgiving. And I don't know, I suddenly felt this numbness travel from my toes up, to the rest of my body. And I knew right away what that meant. And then I started to smell that odor again. It smelled like almonds. And so I said to myself, you know what? Before the rest of my body becomes numb, I'm just going to protect myself and my family. And I saw this this creature standing at the foot of the bed. By now, my knees are numb. And then it got on top of the bed, and it crouched down, looked me straight in the eyes, and hissed. They hissed. It was gray. Before I knew it, the rest of my body was numb except my arms, so I picked up a decorative pillow, and I threw it at this creature. And it fell back. And then I had that afterthought, well, now it's going to get even with me and hurt my family. By that time, after that, I don't know what happened. The next thing I remembered, I felt myself fall into my bed. It could have been from 8 feet or 2 feet or maybe even 2 inches, but I just plopped right back into my bed.
Now,
so what happened was I called Bud Hopkins the next day and told him what I had experienced and what I saw in my room. I wasn't asleep. I was awake. And, I went to his residence. We talked about it. Well, anyway, about 13, 14 months later, he received a letter from supposedly 2 police officers who said they saw a craft hovering over this building, saw a woman in a fetal position with 3 creatures levitated outside the window 12 stories up.
That's what I like about this case, actually. And you had those 2 policemen that contacted Bud. I was telling Tom this, which is a total coincidence. By the way, you were taken on my birthday of all days. So that's just throw that out there. So what another even crazy connection here. But when I first read this in an Omni 20 years ago, before your name was in it, Linda, this was just, it spoke of an anonymous woman who was taken, and several people on a bridge saw this. And then recently your case was on a television show, Unsealed Alien Files, and apparently there was more witnesses that have come forward, and specifically 2 drivers, or 1 driver and a bodyguard in a limousine for the United Nations General, or the Secretary of United Nations. And yet he's...
Yeah, I did promise him I'd never speak his name publicly, but everybody knows who he is.
Yes. Especially because his 2 people came forward. If they didn't come forward, then obviously he might have stayed anonymous. But since his driver and, of course, his bodyguard witnessed what happened, they told it, and it's pretty much a given. I'm sure in the limousine, they probably pointed at him and say, take a look at that, if it wasn't the other way around. But again, very, very interesting to see all these people. I just could not even fathom watching this. If I was driving on a bridge at night and all of a sudden cars are stopping and people pointing at a disc-shaped craft that is hovering 12 stories up, and then you see coming out, flying, literally floating, is a woman, and then you see really small toddler-sized, child-sized figures going with it. You know something's up. It's as if everything you're brought up to believe is flat out, right there. It's like it does exist.
Well, I'll tell you, up till this date, there are close to 100 witnesses.
That's why I love both of your cases as fascinating, because of the fact that you guys actually have supporting evidence in many different directions, that people that actually saw craft. And as I was saying earlier with Tom Reed, Tom Warner, someone he had not met through his young childhood, actually saw on the day he was taken, the night he was taken, a craft over the farm. You guys are very unique in that sense. And I told you this off air, when each time someone speaks publicly about their case, it inspires other people. But a lot of people, they're speaking from their heart when they're very sincere, and they absolutely have gone through what they have, and they've gone through regression. But you guys have that extra element of witnesses.
See, but the problem with me was that we have all these independent witnesses. At first I thought somebody was playing a joke on Bud, a cruel joke, But then all these witnesses started to either contact him or contact other people who have then in turn contacted Bud. And then I couldn't deny it anymore. It isn't something that one wants to believe.
Right.
And, it had gotten to a point, I just told Bud Hopkins, God rest his soul, boy, do I miss him. A lot of people miss him. I said, but I didn't see these witnesses see me. I didn't see them see the craft because they're witnesses on different levels. Some saw the craft, some saw the abduction, some were abducted themselves. I mean, it was really very, extremely disturbing. To this day, I can't accept it. I feel that if I do accept it, it's almost as though it's like saying to these creatures or whatever they are, oh, it's okay, I accept it, come and get me. So it's just a hard thing to live with because we're not raised that way. We're raised that we're born, we go to school, we get a job, we get married or stay single, have a family, and then we retire and die. Nobody ever told us that these things happen. So it's hard to stick that in there, in one's life. It's something that really affected my family and I.
Well,
and then there's government involved. The Roman Catholic Church got involved. Statesmen got involved. It was just unbelievable. And then we had the debunkers.
Of course.
But then, shortly after the debunkers came out, I learned fast that they really didn't matter.
No, they don't.
They
and
didn't
as a matter of fact, if now, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when you would see a case on TV, for every 1 minute of a witness or a case was being spoken about in regards to ufology, you had at least a minute of the debunker, if not more. And as time went on, you now have television shows, several of them on many different networks, talking about these cases with zero time of any debunkers whatsoever. You have Ancient Aliens, no longer has debunkers. You have Unsealed Alien Files, both which have profiled your cases with no debunkers.
Yeah.
But thank God for both of you. You guys had solace by meeting each other, having Bud Hopkins, and having other people who have experienced the same thing. Linda, take us to
poor Bud. I mean, he was on his deathbed, and his ex-wife, she's, I guess, was very angry at him. They had the divorce and whatnot. Oh, man, she tortured him, by using people that Bud cared about as tools to hurt him. So she debunked my case. Meanwhile, she wasn't even in his life until my case was over. She knew nothing of it. It was just such a sad thing, But you go ahead.
Well, those are the people.
I just had to stick that in.
Well, no, that's good. That's good because you're honoring Bud, and Bud was helpful.
He was a good man.
Exactly, he was helpful to so many people, and he inspired so many people to follow in his work. And I'm really thankful that there are people that do follow in his work, such as Yvonne Smith, Barbara Lamb, Kathleen Martin, to name a few, who are continuing in his footsteps. And of course, there was John Mack, who sadly also passed away over a decade ago. But Linda, let's go now to where you and Tom finally intersected and spoke together at the conference and finally started to exchange some information and realized that not only did you have the same lawyer involved in your case, both of you, the United Nations became a big ordeal because Tom's case was being presented there when the UN Secretary General, despite him not wanting to come forward, the fact that his people came forward, witnessed your case. And so obviously it's a coincidence, but at the same time, it's very important. Let's go to that part.
Yeah, that thing, on November 30th, 1989, when this all occurred, we were told that there was a motorcade that came from the UN that early morning. They said they had a closed door session, and the motorcade, moved further downtown on Manhattan. I meet Tom last summer in Maine, and he presented me with a letter that his attorney had written. And I don't know, I was just wondering why he was interested in my case. I guess it's because Tom's case was presented at the UN. Am I right, Tom?
Well, that letter actually was written on October 5th, 3 days afterwards. So the way that what I get from this letter, what I take from it, is that Bud was at the same. He presented at that 33-426 symposium in 1992, and so did my attorney, along with Mac and a few others. So what I think
that's
happened,
when my case became public in 1992.
Yeah, right, and I think exactly, and I think what happened was my attorney had spoken to Bud there. Like she said a moment ago, if I can just back up for a second, that a lot of these conversations are closed door. Our case was not discussed in front of the General Assembly. It was discussed in a library. So there were a lot of those small rooms where they went in and discussed certain things with different people, And from what I got from Bletchman, my attorney, after the symposium, when I sat in his office in Manchester, Connecticut, was that there were a lot of information, a lot of cases and things that came from that. And that's kind of the stuff that my father ended up getting. And of course, when the letters that my father got, one of them that was sitting in my father's attaché case is about Linda. It doesn't mention her name. It says 12th floor abduction case. Well, it's pretty obvious who that is. So a lot of things were being discussed behind closed doors. I mean, even the Greece Ministry of Defense was quoted saying UFOs operation are a potential danger to the European continent. And the Pentagon, letter I have right in front of me says F-4 jet fighter was paralyzed to fire its missiles to an offensive UFO craft, and even the U.S. Department of State. Aliens from another solar system are a potential threat. I mean, there was a lot of things that were said there that you just don't hear every day anymore. And why there's not more information or more on this symposium, I don't understand it. But there was a lot that was discussed there, and so you've got my attorney, Bud Hopkins, John. Just picture this, right? You got Mac, an attorney, the parapsychology, Mohammed Ramadan, Bud Hopkins, Stanton Friedman, Linda Morton Howe. You've got all of them at the United Nations, along with all this documentation. I mean, everybody was talking about everybody there. I mean, that was anything that was substantial, I think, really got discussed. And so letters were flying around. I want to hear about this. I want to hear about that. And there was a lot of crosstalk. There was just a lot of information being shared that.
And I wonder if Lawrence Rockefeller was there, because he was very much involved, or rather, he was very much interested in this phenomenon.
Very, very. As a matter of fact, there's a very famous photograph of Hillary Clinton walking with Lawrence Rockefeller, and she's holding a book on UFOs. And as a matter of fact, Dr. Greer and Stephen Bassett both talked about him. I don't know if he funded something, but he was very interested in getting disclosure to happen. And I think it was Lawrence Rockefeller who actually paid for a full-page ad in the New York Times. It's basically a slap to the government's face saying, if you guys aren't going to do anything about it, well, I'm going to privately inform people. Let me say one more thing real quick. Tom, you mentioned that the Greek Ministry of Defense spoke about the fact that this was a danger to the European continent. And of course, we have other defense agencies. There was also Robert Dean, who served at SHAPE, Supreme Headquarters, Allied Powers Europe, read a similar letter in the 60s. Well, Project Blue Book, which was terminated in 1969 by the Air Force, which was their official investigation. The sad part is the reasoning was there is no scientific matter knowledge to be gained, nor is there any national security issues. How can there not be national security issues when you have things that are flying into your airspace and leaving it without you knowing, and can dodge every known aircraft that we're sending after it. Obviously, that is a national security concern. So what they've been saying is absurd. And you have documents of the other side, which show that they had a concern. So on one hand, they're telling everybody publicly it's no concern, but then you have documents proving that it is a concern, and then just common sense tells you it is a concern.
Well, you know what? We only know what they want us to know, but we don't know what they're holding back.
That's right.
And that's the story.
One thing,
we don't know why they don't want us to know, but we only know what they're telling us.
One thing I should say again that I usually say when people who've interacted with off-world beings, I think you guys collectively, everybody who's been taken or had contact, are, if not the most important, some of the top importance to ufology as a whole. And the reason being is you can have any researcher in the world study all these cases, but nobody can tell you what the inside of a craft feels like, what it smells like, what it the temperature is like, what the beings feel like. I had someone on last week. He had conscious recall of his case, and he hated frogs. And he said what really alerted him, because he obviously was numb too, just like you said, Linda, where you couldn't feel anything. He said when they touched him, he freaked out because the feeling was like frog skin. Those details are not something you would, if you're fabricating a story, you don't really go as far to talk about the smell like you just did, Linda, or to talk about the feel. So you guys, once disclosure happens, who is everyone's going to turn to for answers. And that's why it is so important that you guys continue to speak out. And I'm telling you now, you guys have so much support. And I think this is great, what Bud started the revolution on, and it continues to happen.
Well, you know, at first, I didn't want to go public. I wasn't supposed to go public. I was outed by 3 debunkers. We used to call them 3 stooges. And, yeah, you know, and, you know, then I was given the pseudonym Linda Cortile. Do you know what that means in Italian?
No.
Dead End Linda.
Oh.
So in Italy, I'm known as Dead End Linda. But anyway, I didn't want to go public. I didn't even know what a UFO conference was until I went to one, the first one in 1992, and I was shocked. You know, there was over 1,000 people there. And so by then it was too late. I was public. I mean, people snapped photographs, and I wondered where those photographs were going to go. They ended up in other people's books, magazines, newspapers, and that was the end of me. You know, and the third man, who is the UN, you know, he won't admit it, thank God, but he won't deny it. So, you know, where does that leave us?
And of course, like I said, his limo driver as well as his bodyguard came forward. And of course, you have the other 100 or so people that were on the bridge. And the bridge wasn't going. Everyone was stopped to look at the incident. Now, real quick.
Well, most of the witnesses came from the Fulton Fish Market, the workers down there. They were witnesses on the Brooklyn Bridge, but there was only one person that came forward. They were witnesses on the FDR Drive. They were witnesses from the New York Post newspaper. One of them was a journalist. You know, then you had the motorcade, you know, and people are still coming forward. But the people who are coming forward recently, we don't know if they're authentic because they had already read Bud's book.
Right.
Yes. You know, so you know, we don't really know. I do want to say one thing because I don't know if we have enough time, and I want to give the rest to Tom. I just want to tell anyone who's listening out there, if you feel that you're having these experiences and you're being abducted, don't lose it. Keep your feet on the ground. I'll just give you a little advice. I know you didn't ask for it, but if it is happening to you, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go in your closet, and I want you to see that everything you own, everything you wear is still there. Nothing has changed. Nothing physically has changed except your emotions. And eventually you will get used to it. You will get used to the difference. You might not accept it, but you'll get used to it. And you'll be fine. Just keep your feet on the ground, people. Okay? And life will be different, but you'll be okay. And if anybody out there wants to know more about my case, go to the website. A very close friend of mine made a website for me. It's called the LindaCortileCase.com. And if you're curious, you want to know what has really happened, that's the place to go, to that website.
Well, while we're giving cases, exactly, Tom, why don't you go ahead and tell your website? And I'm glad, Linda, you mentioned what you just said. You got to accept it, and people are coming to terms. And you guys, just speaking right now, are truly inspiring those who are experiencing this but have yet to come forward. And I would not be surprised if they come forward because of your courage. Go ahead, Tom, give your info, and then I wanted to ask you guys about Bletchman.
Sure. My website is it's just TOMREED.info, tomreed.info. And I have a lot of information on there, and I like what Linda said about that. If I can just piggyback for a moment, I think that's what really tore our family up. You know, so many people say to us, you know, was it horrible? Or no, what really happened to us, I think what we dealt with, or what kind of stripped us of normalcy, if you will, because it is, you know, my mother having her bachelor's in ministry, and I was an altar boy. I mean, it does change your fabric, and you question everything. But at the same time, I don't, like she said, you know, find a peace, you know, realize that your life will go on, and just because you experience something very different, or something that you can't make sense of. I mean, you can't make sense of something that you have no way of balancing it, or trying to reel it in. It just is what it is, and you have to move on. But I think with our case, what really made it so difficult for us was that we had that little Village Green restaurant in the center of Sheffield Center, and it became like the main hub for all the kids in the area to park their bikes there and come in for, vanilla floats and that sort of thing. And it became so difficult because the town became divided. You know, we didn't live in a city like Linda did. We had a small town, and a very small town, and it divided the town, and it became very hard for our family to stay there. You know, there were the ones that were very supportive, and of course the ones who weren't. But at the same time, once we moved and got away from it and started over, like Linda said, we had each other. I had my brother, and he's still struggling with it, believe it or not. We all are, I guess. But at the same time, we had each other to talk to, but it keep resurfacing. The thing with Bletchman, and the thing with the UN, and no matter how many times you tried to put it behind you, it was always there. So you just had to find a way to live with it and understand that maybe there was a reason. I talked to Linda about our blood types. The one, really looking into that and questioning or putting more stock into the fact that maybe there is more to the Rh negative bloodline. And I think you said you were O negative too, right?
Yes, at least, that's what I know from the last time I had, my blood type taken.
Well, according to Yvonne Smith, almost, if not all, most, I want to say, because the reason why I'm saying most is to cover myself in case I'm wrong, but almost every case she's presented me, if not all, each person has that blood type. And so it's almost a commonality, which I would presume, since these beings usually follow family lines, it's very probable that your generations above you and below you are also involved. So that is possibly
Well,
why.
here's something else, if I can interrupt for a moment. Here's something unique before we run out of time. I do think there is something to the O negative. I really do. And I'm not sure if you know this or not, but during this started way back when during the, the 60s in Vietnam, where the government started tracking everybody with O negative blood because you were the universal donor. So Linda and I, if you want to get back to the whole political thing again, we were tracked from birth by the U.S. government because we were O negative blood. Yeah.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah. And so again, we were kind of thrown into that whole, governmental, red flag from the beginning. And it just, again, there's just a lot of little different things. But I do, I'm starting to put more stock into that, and I think that the O negative bloodline, I think, was probably the original blood type of man. And I think it's a good platform to build on. And I think this has a lot to do with genes and DNA and that sort of thing. So anyway.
I don't know. There are a lot of abductees out there that don't have that blood type.
That's true.
They may very well be first generation.
Yeah, but do their families? I look at what happened with us. There's 9 of us that are Rh negative. Now, we're not all O negative. My brother's A negative. My ex-wife was AB negative. My son's A negative. I'm O negative. But you ask yourself, how would somebody, if you were, we tag an animal and we set it free, maybe we're looking for a certain thing, but just because we come across maybe it's a shark, right? It may not be the shark we're looking for, the type of shark, but we still tag it and set it free until we find what we're looking for. So I think this probably happens to a lot of people. It doesn't necessarily mean they're all O negative, but I think the majority, and certainly from talking to Yvonne as well, and David Jacobs and the rest, of those I respect, I think that
they've helped immensely. I
think you're going to find that the ones who have repeat contact, there might be something to their blood type more so than those who aren't Rh negative. But that's not my field of expertise. But it just seems.
I'll tell you though, I worry about, especially if the bud passed away.
Mm-hmm.
I worry about a lot of abductees out there that don't have the support I had. Some of them don't have support group meetings to go to, so that, the reason for these support groups is so that, these poor people don't feel weird or isolated, or just feel left out of things, and I worry about them. I really do, because there are people out there that don't have any support, and I wish I could help them, but,
right.
Well, I think you are. And honestly, I really think both of you are as we speak. And the fact that all these support groups are popping up, and again, just by you directing them to your website will make them realize that they're not alone and they will seek out help. I got a question a tweet directed here. One, I think someone's going to be writing one for you, Linda, in a second. This one is directed to you, Tom. This is from Miss Michelle. It's retweeted by her from originally Ruth Perkins Caudill. If I mispronounced that, please forgive me.
Hi, Michelle.
Said, read, please say what happened after the white/envelope window appeared in the bedroom with you and your brother.
That was actually my son. Yeah, wow. That was fairly recent. That was really the only other encounter, I should say, that my brother and I piggybacked around the same time. We both had an experience. His was more documented, so we focused more on Brownsburg because that's where all the investigative teams went and everything. And that's where the evidence really stemmed from. So we focused on Brownsburg. My son was actually okay. It was 2:20 in the morning, give or take. And then again, I don't talk about this much because it's one of the few things that I still find, again, hard to talk about because it's more recent. It was pitch dark. I was laying in my bed and I had white sweatpants on with stripes down the side of it, and they were fairly new. And I woke, and I was, like Linda said, I was wide awake. And my feet were almost straight up towards the ceiling fan. My neck and shoulders were on the bed, And the room was lit up. I could see the clock. I could see what time it was. And I was like in a panic. I had a hard time breathing. It was like I had a cork in my throat. And I couldn't really move anything. I remember my mother referencing how it felt like she was confined to like a mannequin. You could only move her hands and her feet. Yet I was asking myself, how come my pant legs, this is how aware I was, how come my pant leg was not sliding down my legs? Because it wasn't like an elastic at the bottom of them. They were just stayed right there. And then I remember being shifted, and I was actually rotated to the right as if I had a tanning bed in my bedroom at the time. And now it was like fragmented, but now I'm over my tanning bed. And I was looking back. I was able to turn my head in my eyes, and I was able to see that the numbers on my clock. And I knew if it changed another minute, I couldn't hold my breath that long. I mean, I was counting the minutes here because felt like I was choking. And but as hard as it was for me to move my arms, I was able to move my left arm just a little bit, but it was like pushing against a solid wall. I mean, it was that whatever was around me or whatever was keeping me elevated. I didn't feel hands. I didn't feel a board. My pant leg didn't slide down. It was almost like there was absolutely no atmosphere in my room, is really what it felt like. And I was just, and yet I was straight as a board. I wasn't, bent, or my back wasn't bent over. I was level as could be. And then it was just bang. It was like it was over, and I was on top of my bed again. I jumped up and I ran into the bathroom, and I sat on the toilet and I turned on the faucet, and I was, dousing my face with water and everything, and I was catching my breath, and I was, what the hell was that, And then I heard a scream. As a matter of fact, the boy that was with my son, when I ran in there, and what she was referring to, that little window over my son's bed, he's actually here downstairs right now, and he doesn't visit that often, so there's another coincidence. But anyway, I heard the scream, and I ran down the hallway, and my son had the bonus room, over the garage. It's a big room, and his friend Thomas was on a mattress on the floor and had spent the night, and my son was sitting straight up and just sweaty and like almost like drenched in sweat. And he was just like he saw a ghost, and I was really still at this point really shook up. But I mean, it was just a moment in our lives that we'll never forget. And I grabbed him, "Are you okay?" And he really wasn't even almost responding to me at first. He was just sitting there like as stiff as a board. I said, "You okay? You okay?" And then his friend Thomas, who was on the floor there from Florida, Jensen Beach, he said, "Oh my God, I saw this whole room like light up earlier, and then it was he's like just basically collapsed back on the mattress we had on the floor for him." And I looking at my son like, "What happened?" And all he would say was that it looked like a silk pillowcase that was over his bed, like the size of a pillowcase, but like a silk. And it was like a squarish window that was over his bed. And in some respects, I say, "Well, why did that scare you so much?" But it was like he was about to go through it, almost. And I've never really shared my thoughts on like something dimensional or what have you. And I really don't know where to go with that. I can just say that I know there is something very different about my son, his abilities and his talents and his intuition and his tests. I mean, he's had tests from Crystal Lake School, Miami Children's Hospital, right here in Knoxville. I mean, he's always tested off the charts when it comes to a form of remote viewing or sensory. And I've got all the records here. It's going to go in a book when I finally write one. But the point I'm trying to make is that, again, this has something. I know it has something to do with our family, and I try to walk carefully, and I try to say, okay, well, maybe we were just caught in a crossfire or something, but there is something here. And he's really shook up about it. And he's still, for the longest time afterwards, we slept with both our doors open. I mean, it affected me and him that much that I would, at my age, and he's a quarterback, a high school quarterback, we would not sleep in this house after that for probably months without our doors open and a light in the hallway, plugged into the outlet, a little dome light. We just had to. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't go to sleep after 2:30 anymore. My whole biological clock got screwed up. I had to stay up. I couldn't sleep. until after that clock would tick after 2:30, and then I would be all right. But
this absolutely causes
people functions. He didn't come over for Christmas, that kind of thing. So you're right, it does. It's very hard. But like Linda said, you work through it. And my brother will tell you, it's kind of like you're driving down the road and you accidentally hit a dog. You have to put in your head there that, okay, it was a raccoon or it was something else. You have to kind of let it go. You've got to, find a way that you can deal with it, put it behind you and move on. Otherwise, it'll eat you alive.
Exactly. And this is why these support groups are so important. We got a little over 5 minutes left. So what I want to do is
Linda.
I want to ask Linda a question, and then I want you both to basically speak whatever you want to tell to. And
it was just another mystery. I wondered why this particular attorney wanted to know more about my case. And I guess it's just left that way. And there were a lot of people, high-level people that were interested. As I said before, the Roman Catholic Church, others. But with this letter with the lawyer, Tom's attorney or his dad's attorney, this is someone I never even knew of, and yet he was curious to know, or maybe wanted to research my case as well. So there's some connection between Tom's experience and mine. But if anyone out there wants to know more about the case, just go to thelindacase.com. It's a website that was built by a very close friend of mine. His name is Sean Mears. And I don't know, Tom, we might figure it out sometime what the real connection is between us.
Yeah. Well, we even have some of the same friends in Greenwich Village we didn't even know about, and we've been friends with them for a very long time. So it's just kind of weird.
Yeah. That's another thing. Yeah. We found out that we have the same friends. They're newer friends for me, older friends for Tom, and they're good people too.
Yes, exactly. And so many of the people that are involved are not doing this for any money reasons or for any other reasons other than to help you. And of course, the people that are suffering from PTSD, most like you guys, you don't want the publicity. You just wanted to work through this. And when so when you factor that in, when those debunkers say, they're trying to sell books or they're trying to get on television, it's nonsense.
Yeah, you want to hear something funny?
Yeah.
They at one time said that Bud was bilking the case, because he had written the book Witness. And I said to myself, do any of these debunkers go to work and expect to work for nothing? Don't they come home with a paycheck every week? So why would Bud Hopkins write a book and not get paid for his work? He never charged abductees for the hypnosis sessions or the support group meetings. But, God forbid, he should write a book and make a few bucks on it. It's just so ludicrous.
Well, you're entitled
to. I've gotten to a point I just couldn't, I said, it really doesn't matter because they're such morons,
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons I put off.
If you have a,
That's one of the reasons I put off writing a book, because the next thing you know, someone's going to say, they're just trying to write a book. And so,
well, I haven't written a book in 25 years. Yeah. And I think that one of these days, I'll have a book. Everyone else wrote about my case. In fact, this year is the 25th anniversary of my case. I think it's about time one of these days I'll have a book.
Exactly. And see, this is why this topic is important right now, because so many people are coming forward. Recently, I think I told you this off air, Captain Robert Salas dropped a bombshell on my show that was going on before I came on this network. And basically, we were expecting to talk about Maelstrom, and no, he dropped a bombshell that he was taken in 1985. Colin Andrews, over 30 years speaking on crop circles, held a secret that in 1955, he was taken as a young child. The time to come forward is now, people. All you listening out there who are suffering, don't be afraid. Look at these two brave souls who are right now giving their all, telling you what it is. Now, we are literally down to a couple minutes, and I want to give each of you a chance for a final message, whatever you want. Let's start with you, Tom, then we'll go to Linda, and then I'll close it out.
Well, I just think that what has been very helpful for us is that we had a very close family. You know, we there has been suggested because of the political ties in our family that, you know, it was kind of a cold setup. No, we were very warm, very loving for each other, very close, you know, and we were there for each other. And I would say that if there is anything that will get you through this, it's the support of your loved ones and family and friends. Now, my brother will tell you, yeah, we've lost a lot of friends. Sure, we have. But we've also made some new friends. And if your friends are not going to accept something that happens to you, whether it's this topic or something else, then they're not really good friends, and they're gonna find a reason down the road to walk anyway. But it's those that are there for you in the tough times that become your closest friends and the ones that you know, you share the holidays with. And so, with that said, my brother and I are close, but we're both dealing with something. But my son and I are very close, and I've started to see something in him, but you know, I give him a good hug and a kiss on the forehead, and I support him 100%. And he's there for me, and he's even spoken at an event with me before. So, you know, it's a half full or half empty, and for us, it's going to be half full from here on out.
That's right. Linda, I'm sorry for being so pressed on time, but we got about literally 30 seconds. Go ahead and give your final message to all your to everybody listening out there, fans of your cases.
All of those who have experienced what I have, get on with your life. Because you know what? Whether you get on with your life or not, it's not going to change anything. What has happened to you. So you might as well just put a smile on your face, because it's the healthier way to do it. And know that you do have some support out here. You really do. And, you know, keep your faith, too. You know, if you have faith in God, keep your faith in God. That really helps a lot. If you don't have a faith, a religion, well, then just have faith in yourself. You'll be just fine.
Well said. And exactly, faith and family and friends are very important. Linda, Cortile, Tom Reed, it has truly been an honor. We will absolutely do this again. Everybody out there, check out their websites, tomreedinfo.com, as well as thelindacase.com. Check out my website,